Hit record, we are good to go. Good afternoon and welcome to another Tuesday talk for our 2022 Norton Sports Health Training Program. I am Stephanie Fish, your training program coordinator and Tuesday talk host. Today's topic is mental performance for athletes, for runners, and for this instance, for race day. So while we await our special guest, Dr. Vanessa Shannon, let's chat about a couple things. So feel free to chime in at any time using the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So just use that anytime you have a question or a thought or anything you want to say at all, throw it in that Q&A and we will get to it the best we can. With that being said, there's a little housekeeping here. So everyone is automatically muted, so there is no voiceovers or distractions while me or the guest is talking. And then also no one is on video. So if you're sitting at home in your pajamas, that's totally cool. We can't see you. And a side note is that this video is being recorded, so that way we can post it later in the KDF Facebook group, the training group, and everyone can ask questions later or just have another chance to view it later in the day. So again, questions or comments, put them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So I do want to remind you of a couple things. We do only have one Tuesday talk left. So let me switch over here. I'm going to share my screen once again. Boop, boop, sharing. All right. And so that with the one Tuesday talk left, it is on April 26th, and we'll be chatting live with the KDF Mini and Marathon race director. So that's a great chance to get a lot of your last minute questions answered the week of race day. So anything about the expo or lining up for the race, he'll be able to answer those questions right then and there. So be sure to log in and register in advance for that, that Tuesday talk in 2 weeks. Now let's talk about a couple of things. Well, again, we're still waiting on Dr. Vanessa Shannon to get off of her airplane because she's very important. Let's talk about a couple things as we are coming to the end of our training program. So I'm hoping many of you have followed the training program and you trust the process. That's the biggest thing. Trust the process. If you follow that program, you're at that peak point. The marathoners, you hit your 20-mile run last week. Mini marathoners, you're hitting your longest run this coming weekend. Trust that. Trust that physical ability. We're going to talk more about the mental side of it today, but physically, y'all are ready. But we also understand that some of you may have deviated from the training, or maybe you missed a long run here and there, or maybe even you had an injury that kept you from running for a while. That's okay. The finish line is still there for you. And maybe it won't be what you planned, but that's okay too. And for you first timers, any finish time is your best finish time. That's your PR. So you get across that line, good for you. So, and some of you also did the Triple Crown races, which those are great prep for KDF. The 5K, the 10K, and that 15K, leading you through the training. We always kind of combine forces with the Triple Crown because it is such a great progression to get you to that mini marathon in particular. And it fits really well in our Norton Sports Health Training Program. So also take a note, they have already announced their dates for 2023. So you can check those out, sign up early, and go ahead and get ready for next year's program. Now, whether you're doing the mini, the marathon, or the relay, we want to wish you so much luck. I'm actually doing the relay part with a team. We created a Norton Sports Health Road Runners team. All of us on the team are women, and we are all affiliated with Norton Sports Health. So be on the lookout for us out there running. I'm actually doing the last leg, which is the 12.2K. So I should see some of you marathoners out there. So with that being said, Triple Crown and the Norton Sports Health team, again, we're still waiting on our special guest, Dr. Vanessa Shannon. I'm going to bring in a super secret behind the scenes special guest. Allison, why don't you come on in? So everybody, just so you know, Allison has been the one behind the scenes on all of these Tuesday talks, doing the recording, helping me set it up, helping me get the guests, but she's also a runner. So we appreciate that. So Allison just did the Triple Crown. She did all 3 races. And she's also part of our relay team. So let me just point out something. You said that the Triple Crown was your very first set of road races, right?
Yes. So Stephanie, as most of you all know, has been the leader of the KDF training program for many years and really encouraged me to kind of get into running. Fitness has always been a huge aspect of my life. Oh my gosh, she even pulled my photo.
Yep.
Fitness has always been like so important to me, but I've never had the courage to get out on the pavement and run. So it's been really cool to be part of this training program as a new employee with Norton Healthcare. And yeah, I ran all 3 of the Triple Crown races. So I'm really excited for our first relay.
Yeah, I wanted to pull this out because very first time doing the Triple Crown, very first time doing road races in Louisville. And there she is, folks. Of course, she has the most photogenic, herself and her friend put on the Louisville Triple Crown of Racing website right there. So as you can see, they have announced their 2023 dates. I just thought it was really funny that I was just scrolling through Facebook and there she was, there was her face. So yeah, but I did want to ask you something. Let me stop sharing my screen here for a second. I did want to ask you, because we kind of talked about it when after you finished the 15K, that you hit a little bit of a mental challenge there on that 15K, didn't you?
Yeah, so before I ran the 15K, which is about 9.3 miles, around mile like 7, I just felt so defeated. I was like, there's no way I can keep going 2 more miles. It just felt so daunting. It felt like I had, almost another 5K in front of me. But really running with a buddy is kind of how I got through it, and running with friends, and just kind of having that teammate aspect to keep you going, which is why I'm really excited to do the relay. Is while we might not be running side by side, I know that my next point is to get to my next teammate ahead of me, and somebody that's going to be able to take the baton and keep the race going on for us.
Yeah, and you're actually doing the first. We thought that since you've been doing all these road races for the first time, we really wanted you to be able to do that first leg, which is the special leg with the gun and all the excitement and all the people. So let's see, your first leg is a 10K, right?
Yes, so I feel more confident about doing a 10K. That was the second leg of the Triple Crown, and I'd finished in a pretty good time. But my biggest advice for first-time runners or anyone that's never ran a race before in their life is to just pace yourself and not get too excited to start. I found myself getting like so excited. I'm like, oh, gotta keep up with all the first people out of the gate. But remember your pace. Remember what you've been learning from Stephanie and all of the training runs on the Tuesdays and the Saturday mornings, that the race day should be no different. You should wake up, you should eat the same things, like we talked about early on in our nutrition Tuesday talk, just business as usual. Like don't treat it anything differently than what you've been prepping for, I think is like a really big key.
Yeah, I think that's all awesome. I thank you for chiming in as kind of a new runner.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you kind of throwing your perspective out there. So Allison, I'm gonna let you go and lead the rest of this behind the scenes. It looks like Dr. Shannon is getting lined up and ready to go. I'm gonna talk about a couple more things, guys. I do want to share something with y'all. So some of you have asked me, gosh, after KDF, what do I do? What do I do? Well, I can tell you what you can do. You can do a couple things more with Norton, and that are also my events. I work on these events too. So there is a Norton Children's Hospital Splash and Dash 5K in August. You can always take advantage of that. And then there's also the Norton Sports Health 10K in the fall. That date is to be determined, but that is something else to look forward to that's affiliated still with Norton. And then if you want to switch gears a little bit, we do have another Norton event called Bike to Beat Cancer, which supports the Norton Cancer Institute. And that is a bike ride, organized bike ride in September, on September 10th. Lots of different distances, options there. So if you've been cross training all during this training and you've gotten really good at your bike, that's something else to look forward to as well. So it looks like Dr. Shannon has joined us from the airport. Let me get you on there. Let's see, go ahead and unmute yourself there and we can talk about some things there. So, oh, and it looks like I just lost her. So that's the airport Wi-Fi for you. She might be chiming back in on her phone. I think she was trying to get going on her laptop. She's a very busy woman, guys. Hang tight. We're going to get her back on in just 1 second. But today we are talking about expect the expected, and that is going to apply to maybe the next few weeks of training. We've already, like I said, the marathoners already hit their long run of 20 miles, and then the mini marathoners are getting ready to hit their longest at 12 this weekend. So it's kind of expect the expected for those last remaining weeks, and then also for race day or the night before. So we want to talk about that. Dr. Shannon, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely, guys. This is a very special and busy woman joining us. So she was the director of mental performance for Norton Sports Health and U of L Athletics. Recently has taken a new role. If you'd like to share that with us.
Sure, that's correct. Recently, I've taken the role of Director of Mental Skills for the Cincinnati Reds. And so I'm currently actually in the Palm Beach airport going to see one of our affiliates and was late getting off my plane. So I apologize for the delay. That's why I have a mask on too.
No worries. We are live and we understand that we're always going to hit a few bumps in the road. And if you bounce in and out of your Wi-Fi, we understand that too. But that's super awesome. Again, Cincinnati Reds. So you're working with not just the top guys, but also all of the affiliate teams too, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I have a mental skills coach that I work with, and we cover, I'll cover the major league team, and then we'll split up the affiliates as well as our team in the Dominican Republic.
Wow, that's very special. Congratulations. I'm very happy for you to get that.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for taking this small amount of time out of your life to work with us peons over here at Norton Sports Health. So today I was kind of talking about it when you bounced out there for a second. We're talking about expect the expected. So last year we talked about expect the unexpected. So that was still when we were kind of deep in the pandemic and we were still just getting back to racing. So can you kind of explain the different approach between those two?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of uncertainty last year with the pandemic, and so there was a degree of unexpected as well for first-time runners. There's always been a big degree of unexpected. So the challenge kind of moving forward is, can we be better at predicting the types of things that might disrupt us in an effort to be better prepared to manage those disruptions? So that's why this year's talk is titled Expect the Expected.
So what should we expect?
I'm apologizing. I cannot share my presentation because I'm on my phone, but I will forward it to you all and hopefully you can share it with the group that's on here today. I think at the end of the day, it's important to remember that athletes and exercisers don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. And that's kind of a old adage about training and about competition. And so the first thing I wanted to talk about in terms of expectations and expecting the expected is your goal setting. What type of goal setting have you been doing, not just for training, but also for the race? I have a colleague, Dr. Lauren Tashman, who a number of years ago at a conference said, it's actually not goal setting. Goal setting is just the static or singular event of setting the goal, but really we want to focus on goal getting. And the irony is, I'm talking to individuals who are going to engage in a marathon or a mini marathon, and I've always used the analogy of that in terms of my goal getting process. So goal getting is, number one, starting by identify the finish line. What's your outcome goal? Step two, identify the mile markers. What are your performance goals? Steps 3, 4, and 5 are really honestly the most important, because the goal, whether you're running your first or whether you're running your second or your 40th or whatever it might be, typically we have a pretty good idea of what our outcome and performance goals should be. And where we get into trouble with respect to not expecting the expected is understanding the difficulty of the goal and what it's actually going to take to accomplish it, as well as what might get in our way. So the step 3, 1 is finish line. What's your outcome goal? 2, mile markers. What are your performance goals? Step 3 is what's your roadmap? What behaviors are necessary, not just as you continue your training for the next couple of weeks, but also once race day comes, what behaviors are going to be necessary for you to actually accomplish those performance goals and outcome goals. Step 4, which might seem strange, and this is where we can kind of get into a discussion about positivity and how at times positivity and optimism can be very, very important and very, very motivating. But at other times, reality is better than positivity. So step 4 is actually identifying roadblocks and speed bumps, obstacles and barriers, things that might get in your way. Again, whether that's scheduling training, whether that's on race day, a change in the weather, something like that. But making sure that we know those ahead of time so that we can be better prepared when we encounter those. And then step 5 is that detour plan. Like, what are we going to do when we encounter those obstacles and barriers? So I think one place where athletes and exercisers tend to fail in terms of their planning is this goal getting process. A lot of times we just identify the outcome goal and the performance goal, and we don't consider how difficult it's actually going to be to accomplish the goal. And we don't consider the fact that acknowledging that and identifying the things that may make it more difficult for us allow us to formulate a plan to overcome that difficulty. Second thing, really, I think, is understanding the influence that our thoughts have on our performance, our thoughts and how we feel, not physically feel or physiologically feel, but how we feel psychologically or emotionally. A couple of years ago, we had a sports scientist come speak at the University of Louisville. His name is Dr. Fergus Connolly, and he likened every athlete or exerciser's performance to a mathematical equation. So for some of you who hate math, you may be like tuning me out right now, but stay with me because I think it's important and it lands well. But he basically said every athlete or exerciser's performance is equal to their potential minus anything that disrupts that potential. And I would argue that he forgot the work piece of things. We have our potential, we add our work in, and then collectively that's kind of the algebraic piece, potential plus work minus anything that might disrupt that potential or work. So I think another thing that is important to expect is the way in which your thoughts and your emotions may come into play on race day. And they may already have been coming into play in training. And you may have noticed that, right? You might have noticed the doubt. You might have noticed the thoughts that come through of like, oh, I don't want to go anymore. I want to stop for today, whatever it might be. It's important to expect that that same thing might happen on race day. And it's important to expect that as you continue to get closer to race day, that those thoughts may become more prevalent. And they are normal. Unfortunately, they are normal thoughts. They are not helpful, but they are normal. So in light of that equation, our performance is equal to our potential plus work minus anything that disrupts it. We can have disruptions in the physical area, in the technical area, in the tactical area. Again, for those of you who are maybe running your first race, tactically, maybe your race plan won't go as planned. Technically, maybe you're really working to change something about your running form. Physically, you're working to improve your endurance and your fitness. But once we get to a certain space in terms of our physical, technical, and tactical training, the vast majority of disruptions become mental. They become what's happening between our ears. And so what we want to do is we want to build up, and in order, kind of to, again, expect the expected, that these thoughts, these feelings may be disruptive or potentially disruptive to us on race day. We want to build up a resistance to that disruption throughout our training. We want to work on the strategies and the tools during training that then we can employ on race day to deal with those disruptions. It's important to remember that some of those disruptions are going to be within your control and some of them are going to be outside of your control. If the disruption is within your control, you want to try and prevent it. So, what are some of the potential disruptions that may come up on race day? I'll actually give Stephanie back the floor for a minute to talk about some things that runners may be disrupted by on race day that they might encounter on race day?
Well, I guess I could speak on behalf of myself. I did a half marathon that didn't turn out so great a couple weeks ago. It was my own personal disruptions. I was in Vegas, enough said, lack of sleep, a little dehydrated. It was a later in the day race as well. So a little different than kind of what I'm used to, because you don't know how to really prepare. So, but I expected those disruptions. Therefore, I went into that race saying, well, it's not going to be a PR, but I'm just going to have fun. And as I tell people, let go of the ego. If you get in there and you realize, hey, this isn't going to be exactly what I expected or my best time, let it go.
So I love that Stephanie brought up the idea of kind of managing expectations, right? If you're not willing to prevent the disruptions, if you know that you're probably just going to succumb to them, then we manage expectations accordingly. But I will bring up two things that she brought up. Well, three maybe, right? Sleep, hydration, and preparing for a race later in the day are ultimately all things that we can control to a certain extent. And so if we can prevent those disruptions, and we want to, and time and place, we're not in Vegas enjoying our time as well, then we want to try and prevent those disruptions, right? Let's get the sleep that we need to get. Let's hydrate the way that we need to hydrate. Let's run some training runs later in the day so we're better prepared for that, for what the weather might be like, for what our body might feel like later in the day, etc. So those are disruptions that are in your control. We want to prevent those. Those that are outside of your control, we have to really just learn to manage them, tolerate them, and recover from them. We have to recognize that occasionally we're going to be kind of knocked off of our surfboard. I use the analogy of surfing a lot. I grew up in Southern California, and one of my favorite quotes about expecting the expected is, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf," by John Kabat-Zinn. So expecting the expected and dealing with disruption is really about learning to surf. Sometimes we're going to manage it, sometimes to tolerate it, sometimes recover from it, because we are going to get knocked off the board and we have to find a way to get back on. Okay, so that all starts really again with kind of acknowledging the way in which our thoughts and feelings can be one of those disruptions, and considering how much influence our thoughts and emotions can have on our performance. If we consider that, what we find in the literature, and as well anecdotally in the work that I've done with athletes over the last 10 to 15 years at the college level and professional level, as well as my colleagues would say the same thing, people who have effective and helpful thoughts and emotions tend to see an increase in performance as a consequence. People who have ineffective and unhelpful thoughts and emotions tend to have a decrease in performance. And I think that probably makes sense, right? Helpful thoughts, good. Unhelpful thoughts, not necessarily as good, and unhelpful. Where people tend to get tripped up is their understanding of what effective and helpful thoughts sound like. Keep in mind that the kind of base role of our body, at its basic level, our body is designed to survive. And in that, our brain is in charge of a system of systems. And our brain's job is constantly to perpetually survey the environment for threats. The threat for athletes and exercisers is failure traditionally. And so that is always a threat, right? That's always a possibility that we're not going to reach our goal, that we're not going to finish, that we're not going to do what we set out to do. And as a consequence, our nervous system is going to try and help us. It's going to step in and try and intervene because the brain has identified that threat. Our job, and the wonderful thing about human beings and our brain and the capacity and abilities of it, is that we can use the thinking part of our brain and our mind to sort of override that. So those moments of doubt that you have, those moments of panic even that maybe you have, those moments where you don't want to go anymore on a training run, you may have those same types of moments and thoughts on race day. Recognize that they're normal and deal with them accordingly. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about how to deal with that. Ultimately, though, it really starts with developing a higher level of awareness of how our thoughts and our emotions impact our performance. And I think that is, I know that is step one, right? But I think for most people, many people, I guess I should say, that's the piece that's missing is, did you even realize that you were thinking the whole time? Did you even realize what you were thinking the whole time? Oftentimes athletes will come into my office and I'll say, well, what were you thinking? And their answer is, I have no idea. I don't know what I was thinking. Many of us have been trained to believe that if we're performing at a really high level, we're not thinking. This idea of muscle memory is kind of pervasive in influencing this notion that we're not thinking, but ultimately we're always thinking. The question is, are we going to be in control of our thoughts? Or are we going to allow our thoughts to be a consequence of the environment and the things happening around us? So we have to become aware of what we're thinking in order to regulate what we're thinking. Mental performance is really about self-awareness and self-regulation. Once we know what we're thinking, and we can increase our awareness of our thoughts in a number of different ways. Meditation, 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 I always say, and you all have probably heard a lot about meditation and mindfulness, but certainly that is a great way to increase awareness. If you don't have, the desire to download a meditation app and do some guided meditation, you can do something as simple as practicing the pause throughout your day. Every once in a while, just check back into your day, get where your feet are. We say, get your brain and your feet in the same place. The other thing you can try is do one thing, repeat, right? We are really thriving on multitasking, or so we think we are. But at the end of the day, we're really shifting our attention between two tasks or two pieces of information, whatever it might be. And that's not being mindful. That's not being really, really aware and in touch with what we're thinking and doing. And so a great thing to do is to do those tasks subsequent to one another. A challenge I always give to people is next time you get in the car, set the phone down and turn the radio off and just drive, right? I wouldn't recommend you do that for like a 6-hour trip, okay? That might be a bit much, but a 15-minute trip home or a 5-minute trip to the grocery store. When the red light comes, don't pick up the phone and send a quick text. Don't have the radio on, just drive and notice. It's a really great way of practicing mindfulness in your daily life. So again, it doesn't have to be meditation, though it's a good way. It's a really, really well-founded way. Again, a lot of research there, a lot of anecdotal evidence. But we want to drive up the awareness so we know better what we're thinking and how we're feeling and how it's influencing us. And then we can move into the regulation piece. And so I always talk about the 4 A's with our athletes: awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and adjustment. And so once we're aware of what we're thinking or feeling, we have to accept it. We have to normalize it. And I've said that a number of times throughout this chat. Those thoughts of doubt, those desires at time to quit, the thought that maybe you can't go any farther, those are normal. Again, brain surveying the environment, identifies a threat, and acts accordingly. So we have to be able to say, okay, I feel like a lot of doubt right now, but that's normal. So then we can do something about it and adjust to the doubt and perform at a high level anyway. What we have a tendency to do is when we have these thoughts, we categorize them as negative thoughts, or we have these emotions of maybe get some anxiety before a training run or on race day. And we think, oh, that's a bad way to feel. I don't want to feel that. And we try and suppress those thoughts and emotions. And unfortunately, there's zero evidence to support the fact that that works. In fact, all the evidence supports the fact that if we try and suppress thoughts or emotions, they actually amplify and grow over time. So instead, what we want to do is we want to change our thoughts and we want to manage our emotions. We want to acknowledge them, accept them, and adjust to them. A good way of thinking about that is a could versus a should mindset. What could you be thinking about versus what should you be thinking about? A could mindset, normal, again, but not helpful, doesn't have too much perspective, right? It's kind of grounded in micro. It lacks a macro perspective. Sees maybe training or the race as an obligation, right? Focuses on the uncontrollables, is thinking about avoiding failure, is in the past, is in the future, and is problem focused. A should mindset has perspective. It looks at the situation from a micro and a macro level. It sees the training or the race as an opportunity, focuses on the controllables, striving for success, is present focused, and is solution focused. So I'm going to leave you, I know maybe we have a couple of questions, but I'm going to leave you with a couple of resources. One is a great TED Talk by Russell Wilson, who's an NFL quarterback, and it's called The Secret, or My Secret to Staying Focused Under Pressure. It's about neutral thinking. So back to the idea of helpful and effective thinking. What should we be thinking? Let's not categorize thoughts. Let's just get to neutral. And the second is a book called How Bad Do You Want It by Matt Fitzgerald, which is a book that's really about the psychology of running that I would recommend.
Awesome, awesome. And you did mention, guys, the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom screen is for you to throw out maybe any mental challenges you're having right now, maybe challenges you had last year or last week during your long run, maybe challenges you're getting ready to face as we start to taper, or just race day mental challenges. Throw them in there and we could try to help work you through them. So I wrote down a couple of things that are going to be specific to this race. Weather, obviously. So I think we've had,
Always.
I'm pretty sure we've had the worst training season this year. I was thinking back and I believe we only had one Saturday so far that was actually 70 and sunny. So the rest of those Saturdays were rain, snow, ice, cold, and or wind. So I'm going to tell you what, if you've been getting out there and getting it done, I don't think the weather's going to be a bad thing for you, because we've experienced it all. And this past Saturday, we actually experienced all 4 seasons within a 3-hour time frame on Saturday morning. So we're good on the weather, I think, guys. But and then, and I have a couple other people come up to me after their longer runs and dealing with restroom issues or food and starting to get worried about what to eat and when to eat and but as you mentioned, Dr. Shannon, these are all things that we can kind of control, right? I mean, how do your stomach starts gurgling, what do you tell yourself?
That's correct. Yeah. And we actually had a question pop up in that regard, Stephanie. Somebody who has a back challenge about miles 5 to 6, the back starts hurting, try to stretch and shift, but that's when I get scared, I can't keep going. And to your point about whether it's a stomach issue, whether it's a back issue, we may not be able to control the onset of that concern, but what we can control is our response to it. Is it, and to your point earlier about your experience in your race in Vegas, is it going to be more difficult to run when you're not as hydrated, when you haven't slept as much? It is, but does it mean that you still can't race? No. So it's a little bit about managing expectations at that point. And it's also about kind of committing to the discomfort. I know that sounds terrible, but what we know about stress certainly is that it increases muscle tension. And so if you have a back concern or your stomach starts gurgling, an increase in stress and worry about that is actually only going to elevate that concern. So if you can wrangle your thoughts in that moment and really get focused on, okay, my back hurts, I don't feel great, but I'm just going to get to the next mile marker. Let me just think about long strides. Let me think about using my arms. Let me think about tightening my core to support my back. Again, let me think about all the things I can control here, even if I can't control my back pain. Pain is a perception, and miraculously, if we can shift our mindset just a little bit, there are studies that show things like meditation and optimism can actually reduce pain more significantly than even morphine. Not every time. I'm not guaranteeing you. Okay. I'm not guaranteeing you, but it's pretty miraculous what we can do. Will the pain go away entirely? No, not likely. But what you'll find is that you're not noticing the pain as much, and you're better able to perform despite the pain or despite the stomach, whatever it might be.
Yeah. And you mentioned, kind of getting your mind off of it one way or another. I know some people listen to music, or I go completely out, no music, by myself in my own head, which it's almost made me more mentally strong doing that. But this is why we do these group runs, is because maybe you make a friend that helps push you along, and then you guys can chit chat, and before you know it, you've gone 10 miles and you're like, oh man, that was awesome. But I have a friend, I wrote this down because I thought it was funny, but I have a friend that she says whenever she's racing, she physically starts to feel the pain, but then she's mentally strong enough to tell her legs to shut up. So she basically says, shut up, legs, you're stupid. I know you're physically ready. So a lot of it's more mentally strong, guys. You got to mentally be prepared to get across that finish line, or make those long runs, or get through that pain, which could be a perceived pain. Because every single time I start a race, I start thinking, wait, does my knee hurt? Okay, wait, maybe it does. Oh wait, is that my ankle hurting? Oh my gosh, is that I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. And then you eventually just kind of work through it. So being mentally strong is a big thing. And then you also mentioned about small goals. And that's how I've always gotten through a race. That's how I know a lot of other people do. So I do a marathon, I kind of break it down into sections. I know mile 1 through 5 is going to be amazing and I'm going to have the best time and all this fun. And then mile 5 through 10 might be a little more challenging. And then you just have to make those goals like, okay, I'm going to do a goal to this mileage and kind of reevaluate. And then I'm going to do a goal to this mileage and reevaluate. And I mean, is there anything else you can add to that as far as just the small attainment of those goals?
I think the short goals, the small goals are super helpful. I think the other thing that's helpful is a little like knock of perspective at the moment, right? So I'm 5 knee surgeries in. I played Division I college volleyball, and my knee is not happy, and I need a knee replacement. But I still love to be active, and so there are moments where, you know, on my Peloton or on the treadmill or something, I think, oh, I just can't do it. And it sounds wild, but I think about that movie. It's actually based on a true event. That tells the story of the gentleman who was the outdoorsman who was hiking and got stuck, and his arm was stuck between 2 rocks for 127 hours, and then he had to make the decision to actually cut his arm off. And so I literally will say to myself, you can do it. You can make one more. If this guy can do this for 127 hours, you can do this for 6 minutes, or you could, you know. So that sounds a little silly, but it works for me. And that might not be the thing that resonates for you, but some story about overcoming, some story that kind of compels you or inspires you. It's good to kind of have those in the memory bank, so that when we have those moments where we're not certain, where our conviction might falter, we're able to pull those out, and they kind of help us move past. I love the story that you told, Stephanie, about your friend who tells her legs to be quiet, right? And it can be that, right? It can be, we do have a governor in our brain. It's like the governor on a faucet or the governor on a golf cart that doesn't let you drive over a certain speed limit. And that governor is not set for highly trained individuals. It's set for individuals who get up, they go to work, they come home, they sit on a couch, etc. And so you literally are having to override that governor. And sometimes it's by saying, shut up, legs, like, I'm not going to listen to you.
Yep. Sometimes you just got to tell your body to shh. Christina Price put a little comment on here. I really like that mantra. I try a mantra that my legs are strong and that they serve me and that they do not let me down. And that's amazing. That's awesome. I appreciate that comment a lot. We do have something about, let's see, doing the PT, doing the homework. A recent injury came up, stayed on course, but it's a little frustrating. So yeah, and we talked about possible injuries may have come up. Maybe you're in PT, maybe you have to do some home strengthening and stretching to help get you through it. So you do all of those things, and you're still frustrated about it. How do you approach it after that?
Yeah, and it's a great question or kind of comment that she shared, Kendra. I'm going to give you permission to feel, and I'm going to ask you to give yourself permission to feel. There's a great book, probably maybe not between now and this race, but for another time. It's by Dr. Mark Brackett, and it's titled Permission to Feel. And I wish I would have come up with that phrase, because I just think it's genius. You should be frustrated. I get it. Right. And that should be normal. Instead, I think what tends to happen is we don't allow ourselves to be frustrated. We're too busy figuring out, well, what can I do next? What can I do differently? You certainly want to do that. You want to figure out, okay, this is the situation, as my advisor in grad school used to say, to my chagrin all the time, but it's so true. It is what it is. So now what can I do accordingly? But be frustrated for a minute. And when you need to be frustrated, share it with your PT, or share it with your support group, or share it with your running group, or whoever you need to share it with, and allow other people to absorb some of that experience for you. The only way through feelings and to the other side of that frustration is through it, right? Just like I said, we can't avoid it. We can't circumvent it. We can't go over it or under it. We have to go through it. So be frustrated when you need to. And then when you're able to, focus on the things that you can control. What can you do given the circumstances? To Stephanie's point earlier with her disruptions in her race in Vegas, do you need to manage your outcome goals accordingly? And that can sometimes feel like a failure to us and feel like a defeat. But I'm telling you right now, you're going to feel way better about it if you manage those expectations now than if you wait until race day and you've not managed them, and then you do truly feel like a failure.
Yeah. And guys, race day is fast approaching. We, like I said, the marathoners have hit their long one. The minis are coming up with their longest one this weekend. And then we start to taper. So, and during the taper is when a lot of those doubts can unintentionally start to creep in, because you're you're not doing as much mileage, and you're kind of waiting for race day. So a lot of doubts can come in during that taper time. Any quick advice on how to deal with the taper blues or the post-race blues? That's a real thing too, the post-race blues.
Both of those things are absolutely real things. And I think, again, it's about acknowledging that they're normal and then adjusting accordingly. So the taper blues are an absolute thing. People's bodies start to feel different. They feel uncomfortable. It's a physiological adaptation. It's meant to happen. Happens in swimming and other sports where there's a high volume of training, and then we lower that volume of training as we approach competition. So just understanding and knowing, okay, yeah, my body is going to feel differently. And let me remind myself, to your point of every time you start a race going, wait, does my knee hurt? Right? Kind of remind ourselves, well, hold on. Yeah, my body feels funny, and different than it did last week, but it's supposed to, because it's adapting in a way that's going to better prepare me for race day. And those thoughts are going to cycle, just like thoughts of doubt on training runs, just like thoughts of doubt on race day. And you just have to be willing to continue to kind of shift them, continue to manage them, continue to change them. We have a tendency to want them to go away. Like once we address it the first time, oh, I won't feel bad anymore. I won't think about it anymore. No, you still will. The next time, then when you wake up the next day and you feel kind of funny, you'll think, oh man, I feel kind of, okay, it's taper. This is normal. My body is adapting. It's doing what it's supposed to do. I wish it didn't. I wish it wasn't this way, but it's this way for everyone. So I just kind of have to find a way to do what I can do given the circumstances. As far as post-race blues, it's a really common thing that happens. It happens in athletes across all sports. We train, we prepare. Yeah, we build something up. We create so much value behind something. It becomes so important to us, and it becomes kind of part of our identity for at least a period of time. And so, as a consequence, what happens is once we finish the race, there's a loss of perceived identity to a certain extent. And so much like losing a job or losing a loved one or a divorce or some other significant loss, we're going to go through kind of a process of loss. We're going to deny a little bit. Like some of you may get out and try and run too far too soon, right? We're going to bargain like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that, but maybe I should do this instead. We're going to get angry at some point. We're going to get sad. And ultimately, then we're going to kind of accept it. And so you may notice that the couple of days after a big race, maybe your spouse, your partner, maybe a friend, a colleague, somebody notices like, whoa, what's going on with you? So, and that's pretty typical. So again, just expect the expected there and understand you may feel some kind of way after the race, and that's pretty normal.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's all good stuff. And yeah, the post-race blues, man, that's a real thing. So real quickly, Amanda would like to know that what was the name of the TED Talk and the book suggestion again?
Yeah, the TED Talk is by Russell Wilson, and it's called, let me pull it back up. Sorry, I want to get the name right. It's about neutral thinking, and it says only TED Talk. So if you put in Russell Wilson TED Talk, you'd find it, but it's called My Secret to Staying Focused Under Pressure. I'll give you actually another TED Talk before I give the book, which is by Dr. Susan David, and it's about emotional agility. It's called The Gift and Power of Emotional Courage. And the book that I mentioned was by Matt Fitzgerald. It's called How Bad Do You Want It? Mastering the Psychology of the Mind. And it's really a book that's entirely about running. And it's pretty excellent. He's a former marathoner and triathlete, so has some really good insight.
Love that. And guys, you might find yourself with some extra time during the taper. So hey, maybe those are good things to listen to or read. I'm gonna leave us with one last thing. Nate Williams, you're always great in our Facebook group, and I'm gonna leave you with his thoughts here. At the end of the day or end of the mile, remember that you're not alone in this process. Multiple people are encountering the same struggle, both mentally and physically. So we're all in the same boat. We all signed up for this. Let's do it.
Awesome.
I want to thank you so much, Dr. Shannon, for joining us. I know you're super busy, you're super amazing, and you're always moving up in this world, and we're just kind of chugging right along behind you to keep up with you. So thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy. Guys, a reminder that this video is being recorded and it will be posted in the KDF Norton Sports Health Training Program Facebook group later today. So if you missed it or you have further questions, you can always comment on it as well, and we'll try to get answers to those. But it is Tuesday, and what do we do on Tuesday? We run. So tonight is actually our last group Tuesday run of the KDF training season. It is at the Norton Healthcare Sports and Learning Center, and we are going to be outside tonight. We are on the outdoor track. So come on out and join us at 6 p.m. tonight for a little track work. And I hope to see you all out there. Again, thank you so much again, Dr. Shannon, for joining us. And I hope everyone enjoys their week and has a great day. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Take care, everyone.